Excellent. It's great to have you here this afternoon. It's absolutely amazing that you found the time. I know it's tough because it's holiday time for everyone right now, so it's great to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm actually just back from my holiday, so I'm all refreshed and ready to begin the new season.
Excellent. So, Myrto, if we could start, with just an introduction of you and your fund and how you got into VC, a little bit what you focus on and so on, just a general background, please.
Yeah, great. So thank you as well for having me. It's a real pleasure to be joining this conversation. I'll start off discussing the fund a little bit. So I'm a founding partner at Metavallon VC. It's a 32 million euro fund that launched in 2018 by 4 partners, including myself. And what we focus on is the early stage technology investments stemming out of Greece. And by that, I mean companies that are incorporated in Greece, but are also founded by Greeks in the diaspora, which is also an element that we invest in. And we are looking mainly at B2B solutions. So we invest in early stage B2B solutions stemming out of Greece. And our focus is to do 2 things. So the first, of course, is provide the financing. So we're usually the first ticket, the first institutional investor that comes in a company. And the second is to actually help the companies proceed. And I'm saying this because I think it's also the reason why I ended up in venture capital, and that will also answer the other part of your question. I think before starting the fund, I was working in high tech. So I was at a C-level, working on the industry side, also doing some mentoring and angel investing. And what shocked me always was the difference and the gap that there was between the actual level of the technical talent and the actual level of the businesses and the solutions proposed, and how fast the entrepreneurs and how well they could actually take off their businesses. And my conclusion, and I think this is also the conclusion of my partners, that's why we started the fund, is that there were 2 things missing. Those 2 things were missing that we're actually trying to do with Metavallon. First of all, the access to risk capital at the early stage. So the capital needs to be local, needs to be accessible, and needs to be what's meant to be. So risk capital, investing early and taking the risk. And second, like practical support. So there are things that if you've been on the industry side, or if you worked even in finance, that you have seen the cycles. And for new entrepreneurs, they haven't. So they know the technology side, they understand the problem, they have an amazing solution. But there are things like recruiting, like financing, like business development, where they need help with. And especially at the early stages, it's very difficult to hire on day one everyone you need. So I think this is the role of the VCs. This is what was missing in the market, especially in Greece and in the last few years regionally as well. And this is what we set out to do with this fund.
So that was 2 years ago when you set up Metavallon, yes?
Yeah, correct. A little bit over 2 years, the Q1 2018.
And so you're looking for this perfect relationship between experience as an entrepreneur, experience in finance, operations, and the investment side, right?
So from my side, I started my career in finance. So back in almost 20 years ago now, actually. So I was working in finance in London, and this was my first kind of experience of working on the finance side and also in big multinationals. But very early on, I switched to the much smaller companies and the more entrepreneurial, and have been involved in technology since 2007, working on operational roles. And I think the VC side kind of combines both. I think if you're talking about finance at the early stage, it's difficult to make comparison with larger investments or the way that larger corporations are evaluating investments, because you don't have the data at the early stage. But like the entrepreneurs themselves and kind of having a role where you can help structure the ideas, especially at the initial stage, and then mainly help support a company grow, see going from 35 to 105 people. I think that's particularly exciting on this job.
That's great. So in terms of that, can you say a little bit about some of your most recent investments and what keeps you excited at this point?
So yeah, as I mentioned, like we invest in B2B companies, and actually what we are trying to do is to have a technology heavy portfolio, which means about 80% of our portfolio's companies are developing proprietary technologies and have follow a strong IP strategy. And then I would say we're excited about machine learning, data and analytics, and cloud and security. Those are the three things that, again, we have about 80% of our portfolio is concentrated on those three technologies. And then just as a side note as well, like 1 in 3 companies that we have invested in includes a woman in the founding team. So that's also the diversity we believe that brings a lot of value in the teams that we see. And we're generally very interested in all the recent trends that I mentioned. One company that we are about to announce our investment in, since it's our latest investment, is actually on the health tech side and is active in molecular diagnostics. So what it does is that it provides a reliable solution for diagnosis even by non-experts. It can be used at any sort of diagnostic at the point of care or even at home. And we're excited because we really love the team. We think the technology is very relevant at this stage. And also it stems out of one of the most renowned research and centers and university centers in Greece. So it's a great example of actually commercializing technology that has been developed through years of actually going into the R&D side and developing on the research.
Okay. And in terms of approaching you, what are the kind of things you notice about the founders, and what are the kind of things that founders should come to you with?
Overall, we've seen close to 2,500 companies since we launched the fund, one way or another, because C maybe is a bit too specific. Some of them that come in are reviewed by our associates or by the general team before they reach the partners. But overall, we try to be very open and try to see as much as deal flow as possible. I think it's important to also know where the market is, because this changes constantly. I would say that maybe the best quality for a founder, an entrepreneur, is to have a combination of two things, which is first to be able to communicate and explain clearly his long-term vision, his or her long-term vision. And at the other hand, be very practical about how to get there. So I'm finding it personally very difficult to communicate with people who, even at the early stage, only communicate the vision. And I'm also finding it very difficult to communicate with people who only see the next step. So if someone achieves this combination of trying to explain where this is going long-term, because investments are long-term, we're there for 5, 7, 10 years together, but also lay out step-by-step the action plan and be able to prove that the implementation, the execution will be immaculate, then that's the killer combination. So in terms of finding us, we have the submissions through our website, which is open throughout the year, and we evaluate at very regular intervals. We also try to be quite active. We go around Greece a lot. We go around the Southeast Europe a lot when the times permit, of course, given COVID. But I would like to believe that we're quite accessible. So anyone can submit their financing proposal to our website. They can also email us, and we'll be responding one way or another, whether we'll be looking at this any further or not.
Okay, so you sound very accessible as well. In terms of the investments, as you said, you are looking at Greece, you're looking at the Greek diaspora, but you are also looking at Southeastern European market. So could you kind of say a little bit more about these different elements and how you find your projects and what happens with them later across these different markets?
Yeah, the first thing to say is that our mandate includes the Greek element. So our mandators and our anchor investors have invested in the fund in order for it to invest regionally. And by regionally, we mean, first of all, Greece. So we're looking at the market, of course, locally, and all the different cities that are developing, where different ideas are coming from. A lot of them are coming from technology centers, so which usually are based around universities and a few corporates or a few companies that have been built around that. A good example of that is Patras. Patras is the third biggest city in Greece. However, it has a very strong technical university. It has had some companies that have in the last few years developed in the microelectronics and the semiconductor side. And very recently, Applied Materials bought one of our portfolio companies, which was Think Silicon. Sorry about that. Give me 1 second. I apologize.
Hi there. So everyone's still in a working from home time. So these things happen when you're working from home, obviously.
Apologies. I'm sure it's happened to many of us before, like 6 months ago, it would be very embarrassing. And now all of a sudden it's the 50th time that this happens. So I apologize for that. So as I was saying, Patras, different hubs in Greece is where we focus our sourcing. What we're seeing regionally as well is that there are a lot of commonalities in the Southeastern European market. I don't know if you want to call it the Balkans market or Southeast Europe or whatever, but the whole region has a lot of similar characteristics. And those I would say are very strong technical talent, like a very, very loyal and high work ethic from the workforce, which is becoming very important for startups because the churn and as you grow, like the difficulty in recruiting really good talent is becoming difficult. And also increasingly like more bigger international companies that have set up operations there, either R&D centers or branches or whatever it is, that this helps as well with the recruiting, with the sourcing, and also putting organizations and putting structures in the organizations, etc. So I see this happening in the region a lot. And I also see that there are a lot of opportunities coming up regionally. So, for example, last month, a Sofia-based fund, Sofia, Bulgaria-based fund, Launch Hub, we co-invested with them in one of our companies based out of Greece and targeting the Mediterranean. And I can see, like, looking at the different companies in their portfolio, looking at their approach, understanding their partners as well, that there's a lot of communality and the market is really one. So we're very interested in what's happening regionally. I think there are a lot of synergies that can be exploited. And this is our aim as well, like to try and be very, very aware of the local market, because I think there are tremendous opportunities that are happening now, and also that will happen in the next years. And one thing I am getting increasingly from international investors as well is maybe COVID has helped with that you're seeing a lot of a flatter world and the kind of quest for talent and the quest for very interesting startups pushes people away from the traditional hubs, whether you're talking about the American hubs like Silicon Valley or whether you're talking about European hubs like London or Berlin. Or Paris, it seems that there comes a natural saturation in those markets, saturation of startups and of capital maybe. And I think that the chance, and I think increasingly international investors are seeing that, is on what's called the periphery. So what is called, what are traditionally overseen markets, but that have some characteristics that help out a lot on the technology side, and then providing with the right materials, so the product side, the access to capital, as I mentioned at the beginning of the discussion, then also hands-on help can have be bringing in significant value.
So in a way, COVID has made the world a bit bigger for venture capital?
I think so. I think so. So like our experience, so of course, you know, at the beginning when all this started, you know, there was a panic from everyone and trying to understand where the market will end up. But I think the first thing is that, yeah, the world is a little bit smaller all of a sudden. So the world, you know, you can reach out to anyone, and it's not abnormal that you won't be meeting them face to face. It's what everyone does, even if they're around the corner or at the other end of the world. And also I think it's given a common sense of of purpose. So there's a lot that can be done at a local level. There's also a lot that can be done at an international level. And all of a sudden, you're seeing a lot of more opportunities because people are more open to it. I think there's, especially at the beginning of the distant learning and the distant working and the lockdown, people were extremely disciplined about their time. So I found that to be the case with our startups and with ourselves. So it was amazing that you had, strict times where the meeting started and the meeting ended, and then, no transport or like losing time commuting, etc. It was great. I think there's a natural fatigue by now, so I think this is a bit difficult. But in the new world, as it will come out, I believe that it will be much easier for startups to access anyone around the world. I don't know if it makes sense for them, especially at the very, very early stage. But eventually, I think that it will be very easy to reach out and kind of speak to anyone else, whether it's your peer or an investor or whoever it is around the globe.
What we are seeing here is that actually COVID has also made a kind of a speed up of certain investment trends and theses. What took longer to adopt in the past in terms of technology took much quicker. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's very interesting. There's the classic joke about who imposed the digital transformation in your company, and it was COVID, not the CEO or the CTO or whoever. So I think what's very interesting, maybe I'll give an example from the government in Greece. So a lot of the things that for years had been on the cards for digital transformation, like different things you could do, like family certificates or whatever, that had not happened in a month. So I think we waited about 5 years for implementation. Then the first month, everything was digitized. So a lot of it had sped up. On the investment side as well, I think like some things have been obvious kind of low-hanging fruits, and I don't think that this have been settled. So for example, e-education is still a big open issue, like how it will end up and how things will work, especially on the higher education side. So not on the preschooling. So this has become more interesting for investors, and people are looking into the sector with increased interest. Health tech, of course, there you still have kind of the manager agent problem. So, a lot of the health tech investments are sensitive because one person gets a benefit and another person is paying. So, and that is not common, especially in Europe. So that's still an issue, but I think investors are seeing it with renewed interest. We also have around 20% of our portfolio exposure on health tech. So we're bullish on the sector. And I think what's also interesting, one more trend that I would say COVID has brought about is the need for localization as well. So we're talking a lot about the international trends in an open world, and I think that that's clear. But also there's a need for being autonomous. There's a need for being self-sustainable. There's a need for decentralized models, etc. So I think from our side, we're quite bullish on that side as well. I mean, we have one of our companies that's on AgTech, on the AgTech side, that is working on a decentralized system of processing waste to produce animal feed, and we think, and it's doing it in a decentralized way. So we think that's very, very important. The company is Better Origin, and we're also looking at other solutions that are in addition to the international globalized trend, focusing on what it means for countries and regions and even specific places to be autonomous and use technology in order to at least be able to be self-sufficient.
Okay, so I guess we're all seeing that this big change in technology is changing our thesis and approach to certain investments. In terms of the approach, are you seeing that, I know what you said, that a lot of people can now reach everyone practically globally. Are you seeing a lot of investments happen which happen from zero, from scratch in a COVID environment without meeting the founders in person first? Are you seeing a lot of that on the Greek market in Southeastern Europe?
So the answer is I don't think that there have been like many investments that happened from A to Z completely remote. I think this is for two reasons. First of all, things tended to take a little bit longer, and also like until June, Greece had a great record. So you know, there were hardly any new cases. So June, we kind of went out of our shells again. So we sheltered in place for March, April, May, and then in June we started seeing people. So in our case, for example, we closed 2 deals during COVID, but we had met the founders before. We closed one more deal just after COVID, but we closed it after initiating the conversations during lockdown, and then like actually meeting the team after we went out in June. So I'm not sure how many of them have been completely remote. Maybe this has to do with the culture as well. So maybe it has to do with how people communicate and how people feel at ease. It's also a small market in Greece, right? So it's easy to get references, to see people, etc. I think one thing that has changed in terms of our process is that we try to focus very much on our due diligence. So that, like, I think especially in the early stage, when you have a chance to meet face to face with people, a lot of the things come out in the conversation. Now you don't really have this opportunity, or you didn't have it for many months. And what we try to replace that with is to actually try to gather as much data as we can from people references, from work references, from market references, in addition to everything that we're doing as our normal assessment, meaning the market sizing and the technology assessment, etc. So we try to find creative ways of replacing the human contact, but I wouldn't say that I have seen any stalling in the investment activity. And now I'm talking about us, but also every other fund in Greece that's operating in Greece, and also speaking to my international peers, etc. I don't see. I mean, I think again, like, people at the beginning were more worried, but I don't practically see a halt in the investment activity at this stage.
Do you see COVID slides and strategies appear in every single presentation now?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And if I don't, like, I will probably ask for them, because especially as you know, some industries are naturally hurt more than others, and some plans who were made before the situation, so at the beginning of the year, obviously need to be changed. So we do that actively, and we've also are doing less and less are even looking less and less at some specific industries. So for example, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're focusing on B2B. So I think we only have 1 or 2 investments on the B2C side. This now is almost out of our radar. So we look at B2C companies again, but it would take a lot to kind of convince us to get in, and mainly has to do with kind of like the appetite to spend of consumers, and then how much of a deep pocket game it will be to actually gain consumers. So we're not looking at that actively, although we never had. And then of course, you know, everything that has to do with travel and everything is tourism, hospitality, etc., is a bit more challenging these days. Having said that, there could be amazing opportunities on those sectors. But yeah, you're right. Like we always have the COVID conversation with the entrepreneurs that come in, and we also had the COVID conversation with all of our portfolio companies, right? Because that's one of the first things that needs to happen is try to strategize, have their scenarios, and make sure that you can survive on different cases. Make sure you're managing your cash burn, and make sure that you're managing your liquidity so you don't run into troubles.
So that's actually interesting, because you kind of picked up on the theme of what it's like to work with Metavallon as a portfolio company. Is there some more information that you can share on that, what it's like to work with you?
Yeah, it's always difficult talking about yourself, I guess. But so I'll tell you what we try to do, and then as usual, like the entrepreneurs are the best source of verifying that or denying that or whatever. So we try to not tax the companies. So we're very aware that entrepreneurs have very limited time. So we try not to solve problems that are solved. We try not to get involved in places where we don't add value, etc. We try to do mainly 4 things. So So we try to help them with recruiting. So that's the main problem, and I think overall, but like especially in the Greek market as well, like it's very important to get the good people who know how to take companies, especially at the beginning, from stage A to stage B. So we try to help with that, and like a large network and a way to kind of reach out to people, and also having processes of interviewing, etc., helps. So that's the first thing. We try to help as much with like the actual product offering and you know what the value proposition is to the clients, especially in heavy technology companies. That's not always very clear at the beginning. So we see a lot of companies that have amazing technologies, and when it comes down to discussing what is the actual product, what does it look like, what are the specs, who's buying it, what are the benefits, not the features, etc. This is very difficult for the entrepreneurs to communicate. Again, I'm talking about the early stages, because then you hire people and then it becomes easier. So we try to support very much on that side at the beginning. I think it also helps because we've been on the industry side. A lot of my job before that was commercializing high tech. So it helps that we have some experience in that. The third thing we do is try to be on the business development side. So help us much, especially with the B2B clients that have longer sales cycles, that you know, require the entrepreneurs to start having a sales strategy and conducting a sales funnel and kind of evaluating different clients at different stages, just to try and support there. So actually be adding practical value there. And the final thing that we try to do is to have a, you know, to help them with everything that revolves around financing, about fundraising, etc., which is necessary. And at the end of the day, the startups are always fundraising. And I guess above all, so these are the 4 practical things we try to do, and that's how we try to work with the companies. And I think like we see our role very much as acting as a sounding board to the entrepreneur. So I think it's very much a lonely journey, especially if you don't have a big ecosystem. And those are this is one of the things that's missing in Greece. So you don't have a lot of successful examples. You're starting to right now. You don't have a lot of your peers to exchange and experiences, etc. You don't know who to be asking. You don't know other CEOs. You don't know other startup founders, etc. So we try to act like that ourselves, and of course connect them with other people in the market, be in our portfolio, be it in other countries or in other funds portfolios, because I think it's very important to exchange and kind of like not try to make all the mistakes yourself. I mean, you have to learn from other people's mistakes. There's just not enough time to reinvent the wheel every single time. So yeah, that's what we try to do, and yeah, we'll see how things work out, I guess.
That's brilliant. I was also very excited by the fact that you said that you've invested in so many female founders and co-founders. This is super unusual as well. So well done with that.
It wasn't by design. So like to say first of all that we're 4 partners and 2 are females in our fund. And I don't think we ever had a crusade of like investing specifically in female founders, etc. But looking at our portfolio and looking also at even the people that we have invested in who are male, I think there's a communication discussion. So I think it's a lot easier for women investors to understand like both the vision, the execution plan of people who are not like your typical alpha male, very loud, very, you know, I don't know, very prominent types. So if there is value underneath it, and a lot of, I find that a lot of women entrepreneurs do that. So they either underplay what they're saying, or they're not emphatic enough, or they're not, you know, bullish enough to communicate the vision, etc. But if you can get that out, or if you can understand it despite the communication part, then I think that's great. And I think it also leads to actually having conviction about investing in people who are not, you know, your typical kind of like, in terms of communication, bullish type.
Yeah, I agree completely. So maybe as a final point, if I could ask you to give some general advice to founders at this time, something that you can leave them with as a kind of an afterthought after our conversation. Yeah,
I think it's an amazing time to venture. I think that there is a lot of things happening at the local level. Again, I'm talking about Southeast Europe, but in general as well. I think especially at the early stages, COVID is not a deterrent at all. So if you are going to spend time like figuring out product market fit anyway for the next 6 months or 9 months, that's the perfect time to do it, like looked up, you know. And I think there's a lot, like things are maturing a lot. So investors are getting better. I would like to think peers are getting better. There are transactions, which mean there are financing rounds, there are exits. So it's a super, super exciting time. And I guess the one thing I would say is like, go ahead and start doing it, and don't delay execution. Don't overplan, don't overthink. Like the market will tell you anyway what's right and what's not. So start by doing, lead by doing, and the rest will come a lot easier than you fear.
So that sounds like the time is now.
Yeah, I think so.
Brilliant. Myrto, it's been great having you. Enjoy the rest of your working from home. Hopefully we meet soon in the new normal. Thank you so much for your time.
Great. Thank you very much, Kinga. It was a great pleasure. Have a great afternoon.